Good evening and welcome. This is a great night. We're going to be talking about 4 lanes in the new North End, and this is a ballot question that will be before the Burlington voters, and we have the pros and the cons of this proposal. Let me just read it to you and remind you that you could call us at 862-3966 here at Channel 17's continuing coverage of Town Meeting 2016. So the ballot question: shall the City Council, Public Works Commission, Department of Public Works and Administration be advised to keep 4 lanes open to motor vehicles on North Avenue from the Route 127 access intersection north to the Shore Road intersection? This has been a question that has been hotly debated in the new North End, and so we will be talking to folks who have feelings and beliefs and positions on both sides. Once again, 862-3966 is our number. If you have any questions or comments, we would like you to direct them to all of our friends who are here. We have Karen Rowell and Kevin King. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having us.
And we have Rich Nadworny and Liam Griffin. Thank you.
Hey, Lauren, Glenn.
Nice to see you.
Here.
Thanks to have you. Thanks for coming. Nice to have you. Okay, so Karen and Kevin, would you like to make opening statements? How would you like to start?
I'm going to apologize for my public speaking, but basically I found out about the pilot after it had passed, as many in the new North End did. I got up one day and said, the next day, and said, I don't believe that people want this. I went out with a petition, and the very first day had 103 against it with 8 people for it. I said, okay, that's something to build on, and did a for or against, finding 8-1 against down the line. Later we decided that we weren't getting a say. We could see that this was pretty much set up starting with Chapin Spencer being hired as the Department of Public Work head, with only the qualification of having, in my view anyway, being the former director of locomotion, and with no engineering degree. And you could see when you went to the meetings that this was set up to basically go through no matter what. It was going to be a yes from the get-go. And finding that to be the case, we decided to put it on the ballot, and about 40 residents from the new North End raised money from citizens in the new North End and businesses on our own, and got signs, and 40 people went out and petitioned and got 2,000 signatures to put the question on the ballot so that we could have a say, because we needed some leverage because we felt we had none. And so, you know, we think that a safer alternative to what's being proposed would be to pave the sidewalk and widen them slightly, as they have on Dorset Street, Swift Street, Kimball Avenue has some, Riverside Avenue has a beautiful one. I actually am a biker. I biked 2,000 miles last year and 1,700 this year. And I find I add 3 miles to my route, making it 15 each way instead of 12, to avoid Williston Road, which I feel is a disaster, and use the ones on Dorset and Kennedy and Swift, because you have a barrier between you and the traffic, and I feel it's safer.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. So that's our 2-minute opening statement. So I gather that you are opposed to the proposal.
Absolutely.
Okay, to keep 4 lanes open to motor vehicles on North Avenue.
No, to clarify, we are in support of that.
You are in support of that.
Yes.
You
Keeping
want 4 lanes.
vehicles.
Oh, yeah. Did I say it backwards?
Opposed to the pilot for the ballot item.
Okay, so the pilot is the bike lane pilot.
Right.
Right, got it. That's,
And I am opposed to that. I'm sorry if I said it backwards.
no, that's fine, that's good. All right, so,
Gets confusing.
it gets a little confusing but I understand. So you are opposed to the ballot question, which is to keep 4 lanes open to motor vehicles. I just want to let our patient caller know that once we finish our opening statements, we will take your question.
Okay, my name's Rich Nadworny. I grew up in the New North End way back when. My parents built one of the first houses back there in 1956. My brothers and sisters and I grew up there, and when I was ready to have a family, I moved back to the neighborhood, my same neighborhood. And what I saw was that while Burlington had turned itself into one of the best small cities in the entire United States, the New North End had stagnated and in some places gone backwards. and that bothered me. And the North Avenue pilot is interesting to me because it finally says that City Hall is paying attention, putting effort and money into trying to make our neighborhood better and safer and nicer for the people who live there. And the pilot really is a test to put bike lanes along the entire North Avenue corridor and to reduce the 4 lanes to 3 lanes in order to reduce high crash zones and to slow traffic down. We're also putting in 5 crosswalks, which will make people stop playing Frogger as they try to get across North Avenue. I think it's a good project. It's a pilot, which means we're going to test it, see how it works, see how people respond to it, and then decide what to do.
Thank you,
Liam,
Liam.
you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I'm a biker as well. I ride about the same as Karen, about 2,000 miles a year, which is to and from generally the new North End or the old North End twice a day to drop my kids off. Riding on the avenue for me is, convenient because it's a direct route and I don't have to take long detours. I really think it's worth giving this a try. When City Council approved this ballot measure, or not the ballot measure, but approved the resolution to put the pilot into motion, they did that in the fall of 14, and they decided it wasn't going to go in until the spring of 16, so that they'd have enough time to collect data before the pilot went in. So they've spent the last year doing that, and to put it to a vote before we've had a chance to do data collection after the pilot means that we're never really going to see the full picture. So I respect people who have concerns with what's going to happen on North Avenue, but there's no way to really know what's going to happen without trying it and looking at the before and after data.
Very good. Thank you so much. Let's take a question from the outside world. Good evening. Do you have a question for the... Oh, you need to turn your phone off. I mean, your TV off. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Jason Lequier. And in full disclosure, I'm part of the North Avenue Task Force. My question is one for Liam and Rich and one for Mr. Bell. I know how Mrs. Rao feels about it. But for Liam and Rich, is this really a bike project or is this really about safe streets? And for Mr. Bell, really what I want to know, being on the task force, and I've been involved in this for several years, and what I'm really trying to get at is there's a lot of controversy, a lot of anger about the pilot, and what I'm really trying to understand is we're trying to do something safe to make our streets safer, and where is all the anger coming from on trying something to try to make things safer for our community and give it a shot? And I know Mrs. Rao's point of view, but I want your point of view also, sir.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, would you like to?
My name's not Bell, so he wasn't speaking to me. But.
Why don't you just...
And I'm
So
married.
I'm not sure where the anger's coming from. I don't have any hostility or any anger about it. So I'm not sure.
Do you want to just talk a little bit about your position and why you think...
I would say that 2,000 people that signed the petition want an information campaign. They want to be more involved in the process. And to cite 2014 is when it launched, I guess people still don't feel like they're part of the process and they're not involved. So if there's anger, I'd have to say that it's coming from one side, not ours. Ours is we just want to be part of the process. We've balloted and we've put it on the ballot. We've done the heavy lifting. Now it's time for people to turn out and vote and make a decision on how they want their city to look like.
So what's your position on the 4 lanes?
I would like to see that we maintain the existing infrastructure, fix both sides of the road where the drainage is. Crumbling sidewalks would be repaired to be safer for bicycles. Get speed enforcement back into the North End. We're worried about speed and we're saying that people are dodging in and out of lanes with a demolition derby. It's because the roads haven't been maintained. Maintain the roads, cars would stay in their lanes, bikes could share the sidewalks. It's an 1/8 mile stretch of road. To the song of potentially $700,000, it sure seems like a lot of money that we could just fix the existing infrastructure and share it, as we have for the last 50 or 60 years.
Would you like to add to that?
I agree. I think that I know from going door to door that I've spoken to a lot of mothers and they said bike lanes are not, my kids are staying on the sidewalk anyway. And in the study that was done by the North Corridor, to put this pilot into place from 2006 to 2010 in their own study that we all paid $150,000 for, which could have fixed the road. It stated there were no bike crashes on North Avenue in their own study. And they keep, I've been in task force meetings where they're pulling studies from all over the place. I'm like, why aren't you using the study that we paid for that is on the road that we're talking about? And I ride on the sidewalk. The road, as a biker, it starts out wide in the north end. It's plenty wide for bikes and cars. Then when it becomes 4 lanes, it's dangerous to be in the road. You should be on the sidewalk. And it's only 0.8 of a mile. If anybody's any kind of a biker, they can handle 0.8 of a mile on the sidewalk. And if they're polite, they can get by any pedestrian. And then when you get to the end of the 0.8, it's wide again. So I'm the type of person that says when it comes time to fix something, like when it comes time to fix the sidewalk, widen it 3 inches, pave it, and then insist that the bikers use that lane, and then everybody would truly be safe on North Avenue on a bike.
Okay.
I have never had a close call on a bike, and I don't have trouble with drivers. Nobody gets upset with me. I'm on the sidewalk. I have a great ride. It's very, very simple.
So it sounds like your solution, you're concerned with safety also.
Yes.
And then, but your approach is different than what's being proposed.
Yes, I'm with the mothers out there. That, and I did want to add one thing that, you know, the bikers have 2 bike paths, one full length and one half length. They have 2 legal sidewalks. And then they want a 3rd option for bikers when they make up less than 1% of the population that use the road. And 19,000 to 20,000 cars go on that road in a day, every day. So why, it just doesn't make logical sense to put this in place on North Avenue.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to the question and
Sure, I would. So picking up what Jason asked, and I think this is a perfect example, this is not about bikes. This is not about bikes on North Avenue. When the Department of Public Works looked at North Avenue, what they found were there were several high crash zones where there were many more accidents costing millions of dollars, much more than they should have been on a typical road that size. You know, what they also, and it wasn't about bike crashes, that's not what we're looking at, it's looking at car crashes. If you look at the car crashes that are happening around Lakewood up to Route 127, the average cost per crash is $40,000 per crash. That's $20,000 per car. That's a lot of money. And so the DPW is saying, how can we reduce the number of crashes? How can we make it safer, primarily for cars, not for bikes? We're also seeing an incredibly high rate of speeding that's happening between 127 and Shore Road. The average speed, the 85th percentile is 38 miles an hour, which means 15% of all the drivers are driving almost 40 miles an hour. If we compare it with Pine Street, there are on average not 19 to 20, but actually 16,000 cars per day on North Avenue, 14,000 cars on Pine Street. And yet there are 4 times as many speeding infractions on North Avenue than there are on Pine Street, 136 to 32, based on public records from the Burlington Police Department. And that's either because the street is configured differently, or that there are more tickets given out because there are more enforcement. And if you ask Chief Brandon Del Pozo, who I think is a very smart guy, he says over and over again that the way to solve the speeding problem is not more enforcement, it's actually to re-engineer the street. So, you know, I think Chief Del Pozo knows what he's talking about. I think the pilot is about safety, primarily for cars. Just to correct Kevin, it's not $700,000. I don't know where you guys are getting that number from. It's $150,000 for the latest estimate. Again, it's part of the challenge out in the New North End. There's a lot of stories going back and forth of what's going on, how much things are costing. All of this is online at avenueforeveryone.com. But this is primarily a
chance to redirect. My name was mentioned.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like
the
debates.
Republican debate.
Okay.
So, and Liam has probably something to say about bikes.
All right. Well, let's just let Kevin respond.
So basically, Rich completely agrees with me and Karen, which is the road conditions are what causing the crashes. The speed enforcement is the major part. Fixing the roads on North Avenue is going to help so cars are not swerving out of the lanes. The right-hand lanes on both sides are deteriorated. Manhole covers are sinking. People are switching lanes. That's what's causing the crashes. So at the end of the day, I think we both agree. Thank you for driving my point. That was exactly what we're talking about. The safety of the speed enforcement, I think it's easy for the new chief to be able to say that the solution is to re-engineer the road because it's not going to enter into his department. The signs are there, 30 miles an hour. Rich is quoting 38 miles an hour. Clearly, we have a problem. It's enforcement of the speed. If we were doing 30 miles an hour, we wouldn't have the crashes. I agree. I'm glad we agree on that, Rich.
Actually, well, I got to respond to that because actually, Kevin, that's exactly the opposite of what I said. That what the chief is saying and the Department of Public Works is saying is the 4 lanes that are exacerbating the speeding because people are moving in and out, not because of the conditions of the street. If you reduce the roads to 3 lanes, 1 lane on each side and a center lane, you're going to get people driving slower. And we already have enforcement. We already enforce it 4 times as much as we do on Pine Street. That's not the answer. It costs too much. It doesn't make any sense. And where are you going to pull the policemen from to sit in their cars on North Avenue? You're going to pull them from the opiate crisis? You're going to pull them from violent crimes? Doesn't really make much sense. So I think you've not really quite heard what I've said. I've actually disagreed with everything you've said.
So, Liam, let's just have Liam.
Yeah, if I could, I'm not sure if they can pull up this graphic. We're talking about a reconfiguration of a street to make it safer for everybody. That's, as Karen pointed out, there were not a lot of crashes with people on bikes, and there's not a lot of people on bikes riding right now. I mean, I drive on the avenue as much as I bike on the avenue. My wife drives to Winooski every day, and my neighbor, a week ago tonight, was rear-ended, turning left into our neighborhood by someone who was driving too fast and didn't even slow down, hit him full speed, totaled both cars. This scenario, if you've driven on a 3-lane conversion with a center left turn lane, it takes the left turning traffic out of the way. And what that changes is you no longer have to change lanes to get out from behind that person, and you're not in a position where you're going to hit that person. If you're the person making the left turn, you've only got to look at 1 lane of traffic coming towards you, gauge their speed appropriately, and make the left turn safely. So if you look at the collision points.
Wait 1 second. Could you bring up that slide, please? Yep. Go ahead, Liam.
It literally cuts the number of potential collision points in half when you go from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. You know, you don't have 2 people that can hit you when you're making a left turn. You don't have people hitting each other when they're changing lanes. You don't have people getting rear-ended when they're stopped to make a left turn. And if you look at the crash statistics on North Avenue, the types of crashes that we have are side swipes, rear ends, and people getting hit making left turns.
Okay.
And those are statistically the exact types of crashes that are prevented when you change up to this new lane configuration.
Thank you, Kevin.
So Rich just commented that the enforcement wasn't the issue, and that you know, I grew up in Burlington as well, and anybody that went to Burlington and went through driver's ed and got their license realized quickly that you never ever speed by the Burlington High School because there's always an officer parked right there. That officer doesn't run patrol there any longer. There was a couple of segments that the news covered where the parents were out there and they were doing their own little study in the pilot where they were running radar, shooting down towards the orphanage, picking people up, and that's the speeds of 38 miles an hour. That's a perfect spot for an officer to be where we wouldn't have to race. You mentioned pulling officers from opiate addictions and heroin. I'm not suggesting that we compromise one side of the city for the other, but I think it's time that we get our fair share. We pay for it. Speed enforcement is an important part of an officer's, and if it's as busy as we're talking about, it's an income stream. So the chief ought to love that. We can actually offset the cost, paying for it, just purely on the enforcement of the tickets that get issued. So I think, once again, we agree that it's a win-win. We have the infrastructure, we have the occasion, all we need is the officer to write the tickets.
Karen?
And I have no problem with that.
Did you want to add to that? Well, we had different figures for the crashes. We came up with from 2010 to 2015, there were 8,714 total accidents in the city of Burlington, and 398 of the total occurred on North Avenue, which is 4.5% of the total accidents in the city. So we have a lower amount. And also, I agree with Kevin that enforcement is the way to go. I know that on Colchester Avenue, there was a gentleman that spoke at the city council who said that totally took care of the problem when they were having issues with it, with the crashes on Colchester Avenue. And I think it is part of the police's job to do law enforcement. And you know, the thing is if you're out there and you're out there and you're out there, then people slow down, and then you don't have to be out there every minute, and the cost would be offset by the tickets as well.
So let's we have 3 calls, so let's take them. It sounds like you are agreed that there's a problem, but not agreed on how to solve it. Good
Absolutely
evening.
right.
Do you have a question for our folks here on the ballot question in Burlington?
Good evening. Yes, thank you for taking my call. You caught me by surprise by saying this is for cars. I just got home myself on my bike. I ride 160 days a year down to South Burlington, and I live in the North End, and I travel the bike path because I feel it's safer. And I was wondering why you thought this arrangement would be safer for bikers, and why you wouldn't opt to take the bike path instead of North Avenue, because I refuse to drive on it because it's not safe, whether it's 4 lanes or 2 lanes. Cars and bikes don't mix. We had 3 people killed in the past year who were killed by drivers either inattentive or impaired. So, there's a lot of unsafe drivers on the road. You see it all the time when you ride as often as I do. So I'd be curious why, if it wasn't for bikers, why are bikers the people out there supporting this?
Okay, thank you very much. So as bikers who are supporting this, why do you think this is a safer proposition?
Well,
The pilot is a safer
2
proposition.
points. I hear it a lot, take the bike path. There's literally a guy on my morning commute who yells it at me every day from his vehicle. There's a couple reasons I don't take the bike path. In the winter, it's not plowed, it's not maintained, and it's not safe from a perspective of just crashing of your own volition because you have to ride in icy or snowy conditions. From a convenience standpoint, to get from the new North End to the old North End via the bike path means I have to go to the bottom of Depot Street and then ride back up Depot to get to the old North End. So it adds about 15 minutes to my commute. If I do my commute on North Ave, it's 15 minutes. If I do it via the bike path, it's twice that. And plus I have to add in Depot Street, which is, challenging at the best of times, even for somebody as fit as I might be. As far as, mixing bikes and cars, right now you're mixing bikes and cars. There's the space for people on bikes on North Avenue is delineated by a sign that says bikes may use full lane, and that's what you're legally supposed to do on North Avenue. You can ride the sidewalk. I find the sidewalks to be very dangerous. There's a lot of driveways, there's a lot of side streets, and at every single one of those, you've got a potential conflict point. May use full lane as the recommended path for someone to take in that 4-lane section because you're visible and you're not going to broadside a car at every single driveway or cross street. So take the bike path logic or take the sidewalk logic. One, you can't do it half the year. Today happened to be winter bike to work day. I rode today actually with the police chief and a number of other people, as I did every day this week. And the only option I have in the winter is North Avenue. In the summer, if I want to go to Echo or if I want to go to North Beach, yes, I'll take the bike path. But most of the time for, the bank, the shopping center, the mailbox, the mailboxes at the shopping center, there's no real option to get there via the bike path unless you want to detour, as I do. I live on the east side of the avenue, so it's a mile to get to the bike path.
I got it.
Yeah.
So one thing just to add on to that, because I think a lot of people who are wondering about the pilot and what impact it's going to have are worried about waiting in line, longer commutes, and based on the estimates that the Regional Planning Commission has done, they're estimating it's going to take 2 more minutes once we put in the 3 lanes. And I want you to just compare that with that's a minor inconvenience compared with riding your bike 15 or 20 minutes in the rain up the hill to get to work, which a lot of people are doing. They're taking North Avenue to get to work on their bikes when they're going to the hospital or the old North End. They're commuting to work too. And I don't think it's too much to ask that we spend a couple more minutes in our cars so that everyone can have a little better commute in the morning.
Thank you.
I think that's pretty
I'd like
fair.
to respond to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Well, it's just as a biker, and I might add that when I was petitioning, I really wish I would have put B's next to all the bikers' names that just said, there's no problem on North Avenue biking. I don't understand why you don't just ride on the sidewalk. It's perfectly safe. If you're worried about somebody coming out of their driveway, if you're in the road, they're going to come out of their driveway too. It's a difference of 3 feet. If you just look where you're going and drive defensively like all people should on bikes, all people, there's no I mean, you can see people, you can see if a car is started up. I don't understand that logic. It's very safe on the sidewalk. I will not let them say that it's not safe on the sidewalk, because it is. And the mothers tell me this. So why would a mother put their child in danger when they're saying, if there's bike lanes, and oh, I have to add one thing. The commissioner in Rutland took this design out after 31 days because he was horrified at how dangerous it was for bikers. And that's the reason it was switched back after 31 days. And I can add some other cities that have changed this back. Let's see, Boulder, Colorado, Gainesville, Florida, Memphis, Tennessee, Des Moines, Iowa, North Beach, North Carolina, Arlington, Massachusetts, Spokane, Washington.
Got it.
And so, and Morgan Hill, California.
Thank you.
Kevin, could I
That's a
just
lot of
one
money
other
to
thing I'd like
switch
to
Yes,
talk
you
about?
can.
The one other point that I want to mention is that I agree once again with Liam that the bike path not being maintained is going to be his major problem. I have no problem with the city plowing that with the same sidewalk plow that they use on my street. It's a 5-foot blade. They clear Riverside Avenue beautifully. They do a really nice job with it. If that extra commute, there's also the other bike path that we have that conveniently runs right along the belt line. It goes right into the old North End. It's very safe. I see a lot of people running and using it. The infrastructure is there. The extra time and the extra commute that's there. We also have city transit. They're very well equipped. They have nice bike racks on the front of them. It's great when you get groceries, you're able to transport back and forth, as we saw when we were looking for a grocery store closer to downtown for the people in the downtown district to make sure that they had a grocery store with City Market. Some people needed an alternative, so Hannaford's, the CCTA quickly added all the racks so the bikes could transport back and forth. So once again, we agree it's a maintenance issue with the existing infrastructure.
So I just want to add two more things with that. So you're right, Jeff Wenberg, when he went back on the Rutland, he said, quote, that he actually liked the new design, but he couldn't vote to keep it because there hadn't been adequate public education. And that was the reason why that they did not do it. Well, no, that's a quote directly from him on Vermont Digger. They did it very hastily, and it didn't work. And that's what we're trying not to do here. There are hundreds of examples of road diets all around the country that show that they reduce crashes, slow speeds down. And to Kevin's point, yeah, we can take the bike lane, bike path here and there, but it's kind of the same thing. Karen lives at the end of North Avenue. And no one's saying to Karen, you have to take the belt line. I mean, we built tens of millions of dollars to put the belt line, but it's about choice.
But it's not about bikes. It's your words. It's not about bikes. It's about maintaining our existing infrastructure.
No, it's not. It's about designing things that make it safer and better for the neighborhood. That's what this is about.
Let's take this next call. Good evening. Do you have a question for the folks here on the ballot question?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. I don't have so much of a question as maybe more of a comment. I would like to say that I'm in favor of the pilot. I think it's a good idea. I live directly on North Avenue, and I watch cars speed by my house at much more than 40 miles an hour very often, all day and all night long. And it's not a pleasant experience living on North Avenue, feeling like I'm living on a 4-lane highway. The lanes, as a driver, which of course I am, lanes are very narrow, especially on that strip that we're talking about. Lanes are very narrow, especially the right lane, and it does not feel very safe having a car next to you so close. I know that on other streets that I've seen where they've done this sort of a reconfiguration, such as Colchester Avenue and part of Williston Road, as a driver now, I find it much less stressful driving in the situation where I have a wider lane, a nice turning lane, and it just feels much easier to drive on. Coming out, because I live on the east side of North Avenue as well, it's really it's quite an experience trying to make a left turn out of my driveway to get onto North Avenue going south. With that middle lane there, that would be much easier and much safer, I might say, because I have avoided accidents on several occasions just turning out of my own driveway. So
Thank you.
I feel that the 3-lane configuration would give us wider lanes, first of all, to drive in, and would just give us just more elbow room going up and down the avenue and make it a more pleasant street that does work for everyone. I'm not even considering the bicyclists, although I have no problem with having bike lanes on the avenue.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So
I appreciate your comments.
Say that.
Okay, great. Good evening. Do you have a question for the folks here on the debate? Could you turn your phone down, please? your television down, please. Keep your phone up, turn down your television. There we go. Do you have a question?
Yes, I would say that Richard was false in his statement about $7 million. When the project is done, it is $7 million. The pilot is $154,000. But once you do the whole project, they're talking about, it will cost $7 million. Nobody's making up numbers here. It's on their website, Avenue for Everyone. It's on DPW's website. And in addition, this is a commercial district where the 4 lanes are. It's turning right, left, crazy, crazy, crazy. Why would you want to put bikers in a bad position by putting lanes in there when everybody's going to their goods and services?
Okay, thank you so much for your question. The question that I have is, what has the experience been on Shelburne Road and Williston Road where they have implemented this 3-lane?
Colchester Avenue, too.
Well, also, and Colchester Avenue, but what has been the experience there? Has there been a reduction in
There's been
accidents?
a reduction in people. When I was petitioning, I left Williston Road. It used to be my daily route, and I refused to ever go on Williston Road again. And I found that a lot of people have left it. What I'd like to see is a study of how much reduction there has been on that street, because if your goal is just to get everybody to leave the street, then yeah, go for it. This is a great design because
okay, but not to interrupt you, but does South Burlington have data on changes in accidents, traffic behavior, volume? Is there data?
Not that I know of. What I'd like to know is, I'd like to know the amount of cars that used to use the road and the ones that don't, because when I was petitioning, people were like, oh yeah, I don't go on that road anymore, I take this long meandering route. They're describing all these different ways they take to now avoid the street, and when I've had to be on it, I've been sitting in traffic, so you're getting more carbon by
But I think
sitting
also
in traffic
that,
and taking
you know,
long
the
meandering
idea
routes.
that Williston Road, it's a main artery that feeds Route 2. As that road diet has gone on and cars have limited the amount of cars that are going to go there, they're going to seek alternate routes. If you travel Kimball Avenue now on the backside of Technology Park, it's bumper-to-bumper traffic going to Walmart. All that happened not because of the box stores and what happened there, but they addressed an issue on Williston Road. It forces the traffic in the neighborhoods, and now they're on the backsides of Williston Road. So a traffic study is going to compound and look at the intersections, Kennedy, Williston. I can't speak for their argument if that worked for them or it didn't. All I can say is that in our immediate job, what we feel that we had to accomplish was to get an information campaign to get people to pay attention and realize this change was happening. And so by balloting, we did the heavy lifting. We got 2,000 people as an education campaign. I think we did a really good job. We've got it to the point where it's on a ballot. It's going to be left up to the voters to decide how they want to move forward. And once they're done with North Avenue with the safety road diet, how would we change Shelburne Road? From Rotary to Kegels, it's just not realistic to have that happen. Pine Street, 30 years ago I lived in the South End. I'm still waiting for the circumferential highway. That's never going to happen. It was a $137,000 project, the circumferential highway. Now we've got 19 million. There's 2 people or a couple of lawyers that tied it up.
Okay.
So I can't address Pine Street, Williston Road, and all the other areas, but I can say if we fix the existing infrastructure and maintain it, I think we'll all be happy with the results that we would get from that.
So Colchester Avenue is a good example, and I was just at Ward 1 and 8, where they kept asking us, why don't the people who are against the pilot look at Colchester Avenue? Because they think, the people who live there, that was a smashing success. And what they've done is, they did this step by step. They reduced from 4 lanes to 3. They put in bike lanes. The traffic volume is exactly the same. That has not changed. And people are driving slower. It's safer. They're measuring crash data. And the things they set out to do, slow things down and reduce crashes, have succeeded so far. And the residents of the neighborhood like it a lot. So that's, and I know I don't have data for Williston Road, but again,
if you look at Williston Road and you map it without even looking at where the 4 to 3 lane conversion happened, just looking at a series of dots, you can see that conversion because the dots are way less dense, right? If you go on the mapping tool on VTrans and punch up Williston Road, it's night and day, the 4 lane section to the west and the 5-lane section to the east when compared with that, the 3-lane section.
What are the dots?
Actual crashes.
I see.
You know, so it's, you don't even need to drill down. You can just punch up the map, look at where all the crashes are happening, and that section is much safer than anything to the east or the west.
And does that have to do with reduced volume on that road?
No, it's still 22,000 cars a day through that section.
I think the other thing, though, you know, that's really important from the Colchester Avenue example is, you know, what they did was they had a plan, they made it a pilot, they put it in place, they tested it, they revised it, they see what worked and see what didn't, and then they evaluated whether they were going to continue to do that or not. And that's really the plan in Burlington. It's not to say, let's shove this down everyone's throat, although I think you guys think that that's going to happen. That the mayor and the city council are lying when they say, you know, they're not going to listen to public feedback, even though it's in the law that they're going to do that. But that's the pilot that says, let's do this, let's let everyone experience this, and then let's see what happens. And I think that's a really smart approach.
Can I just address something? You mentioned Colchester Avenue being a great success. I think Colchester Avenue speaks exactly to what we were talking about. There's alternative routes that you can take. East Avenue I would not consider as a blessing that came from that road diet. Traveling Mansfield Avenue, there never used to be stop signs that were in front of Montecresti and signal stop signs at each of that neighborhood. Now there's so much traffic being forced into those different neighborhoods because the people are seeking alternate routes to get where they're going. Riverside Avenue, you could line them up, you can see what's going on. The rotary was an improvement. As we move the traffic from Colchester Avenue, you can seek alternate routes. North Avenue, we don't have that luxury. So if you're on North Avenue and it gets compressed, where are you going to go? The Beltline? I mean, you're going to be forcing people that we don't have an alternative route. It's a major artery into commercial district, as the caller said.
And I did want to.
Isn't the Beltline the alternative to North Avenue?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So, but if you're on the south end of it, if you're on the north end of it, you're going to have to go to Plattsburgh Avenue, which is part of the pilot change, the long-term vision of what's going to happen. So if you're on that end of it, you're going to be going to the Beltline and going in, driving into the center of town. So if the idea is to change traffic patterns or to move it, I agree, that's exactly what you're going to get. But we can't seek alternate routes if we're right in the middle of it. Like the caller said, he can't take a left out of his neighborhood. He's directly going to be impacted. The businesses that are there, I mean, if they're not paying attention, you certainly should, because if you go to Clausen's Florist and you look at the businesses that are on Williston Road, they've turned over several of those locations. That's more than just a coincidence. A lot of those businesses were there for many, many years. I just think that we've got it on the ballot. People have a voice to be heard. You have an opportunity to vote March 1st.
And I did want to say too, when you say that people in Colchester Avenue just love it, you collected data from the people in that area? You collected signatures and found out that people loved it? Where did that data come from? Because when I talk about Williston Road, right, I heard a lot of expletives about Williston Road when I was doing the petition. And you know, there's a young guy that works on North Avenue. He goes, I take Williston Road every day, and I hate it every day. So I know a guy who has a business.
Can I pause you?
So let me just answer that.
Respond? Let's take some calls.
We can trade anecdotal data. I have lots of people who say Williston Road is great. Actually, the Department of Public Works did a survey with the residents. 80% of them, actually, real data, Karen,
I'd
real
like
data.
To see that
it's out there. Said that they approved of the pilot, and I think that's what we're trying to do: get real data, stop doing anecdotal. We can go back and forth on this argument forever. We'll never convince each other. Let's try the pilot. Let's see what works.
Good evening. Could you turn down your television? Do you have a question?
Hi.
Hi. Question?
Yes, I'm happy to fire a question. Probably be the last one of the evening. Looking at the timing, in the interest of full disclosure, this is City Councilor Tom Ayers calling from the New North End, and I have been a strong advocate of the at least going forward with the pilot study. I have two questions, really, to both sides of the issue. One is, what is current state law with regard to bicycles being able to take the main travel lane along North Avenue, particularly during the 0.8 of a mile stretch that's under contention here? And the second question is, have opponents of the pilot study who have suggested widening the sidewalks as an alternative looked at two issues surrounding that? First of all, the cost compared to what's proposed in the pilot study, and second of all, the safety impact on pedestrians and motor vehicles backing out of their driveways along stretches of road such as that. So I'd love to hear both sides address those two questions.
Okay, those are some big questions there, Tom. Thank you very much. We're going to keep going if that's all right, because we have some more people calling on the phone. All right, who would like to take up Tom's 2 questions?
I'll take the state law. I mean, there's a big sign right at the 127 that says bikes may use full lane. There's similar signs on South Winooski when it goes to 4 lanes. Any situation in Burlington where a bike lane ends and you are confronted with 4 lanes and you don't have a bike lane, you're entitled to the full lane. Generally, you ride as far to the right as is practicable, but in a situation where there's 4 lanes, you're entitled to the full lane. So the safe thing to do is to sit in the middle of that lane, because it's a 10-foot lane. It's not safe for you to ride to the right and have people squeezing past you. That's something that you learn pretty quickly. If you ride to the right, people will try and pass even if it's not safe.
Okay, Karen, why don't you go ahead, especially on the sidewalk.
I have a really hard time with that law. I think that that is a law that Vermont needs to change, because as adults, we know that if you take the full lane, you're supposed to be fully lit with all kinds of bike flashers to show that you're using the full lane. And I honestly think that that was a very irresponsible law for Vermont to pass, in that how long before a child in a dark hoodie at night goes out and reads that sign and says, oh, I can take the full lane, and takes it with nothing on their bike. There's a lot of people that don't have a lot of money in Vermont. They go out there, they're in the middle of the lane, and as a matter of fact, a petitioner told me just that happened. He said, I came right up on him, and he was in the middle of the lane, all in black. He didn't even see him until he was right on him. It's extremely dangerous, and I think that Vermont should think twice about that law. I think it's irresponsible.
Can you address
and it's extremely unsafe.
Can you address the bikes on the sidewalk question?
Let's see, what was the question? Just that.
So I can add something there. So cost.
Yeah, the cost and
so
safety
one of
of
the things
bikes on the sidewalk.
that Karen has suggested is that we create bike lanes around the sidewalk so that they can go, get off the road on the 0.8 section of the 4-lane road. And actually, Karen, Local Motion wants to do something similar as well. The challenge is for that stretch, for 0.8, to put the bikes on the side of the road would cost up to $2 million.
For 0.8 of a mile only on one side?
Yep.
So we're going to bring up this slide if we could.
I'll get you another estimate, because I'm sure it can be done for much less.
Those are on the low end. And so that's kind of the problem, is like, that's a great idea, but you know what? We can't ask Burlingtonians to pay that much money for this project right now. That's a lot of money for Burlington, $2 million for less than a mile of bike lanes. We'd love to do it. Let's see if we can raise the money, but right now we don't have it. Yeah. Can you bring up the...
But we have $7 million to spend on roundabouts?
It's not $7 million. I don't know where you got that from.
From your website.
Not $7 million.
This is the configuration that you're talking about, Karen. It's exactly the same as what's on Dorset Street right now. You've got a sidewalk, a bike lane. This maintains the current lane configuration on the street for all the car lanes. And this was proposed. It's in the original proposal as a long-term, high-cost solution. And here's what that looks at. It's $13 million for the entire length of North Avenue.
To pave a sidewalk.
No, not to pave a sidewalk, Karen. You got to understand, there's utilities the entire length of the avenue. If you're going to put in a configuration like this,
it doesn't need to be
Karen,
a big.
This is from an engineer. All right, you can have your opinion about what you think things cost. This is an actual estimate based on a plan drawing, right? I would love to see this happen, but it's financially impossible, and it's politically disastrous, because it would require taking huge chunks of people's front lawn on North Avenue, and I don't think anyone's going to be very happy about that. So if you'd rather spend $13 million and take away chunks of people's front lawns, or spend $154,000 and do this within the existing curb lines using only paint, so short-term low cost versus long-term high cost.
Karen, do you want to respond to that? And then we'll take
well,
another call.
I find it hard to believe it would cost $13 million to pave over an existing sidewalk, and it doesn't need. You don't need to take people's lawns. You can take the other side of the sidewalk, and it doesn't need to be wide. And when there's 4 lanes of traffic, you'll see, like, go to Williston Road. When there's 4 lanes of traffic, generally speaking, there's not a lot of pedestrians. And we have been having pedestrians and bikers be together for 30 years on the bike path. And the sidewalk does not need to be, I'm sure that they got some, I didn't look at that design. I know I know I could come in at a lower figure with, find people that could do it for a lower figure.
Go
Okay.
for it.
And
Go for it.
Let's
We
take
would
another
love to see
question.
that.
I will.
We have another question from the audience. Actually, hold on, let me take this call and then we'll take the audience question. Caller, do you have a question for the panel?
Yes. Why should we put tax money into something that's going to add another layer of traffic to North Avenue as opposed to addressing some of the existing problems that are quite severe and have been around for more than 20 years in some neighborhoods?
Such as existing problem
Well,
example?
the fact that they opened up my dead-end street to two-way traffic, and we still don't have a sidewalk.
Okay, great, thank you. Response to that question?
So I'll jump in on that. So one of the questions that came up was around anger, and I think one of the things that's going on in the North End is, and I hear this a lot, that there have been lots of complaints to the Department of Public Works out in the New North End. Why aren't they fixing the streets? Why aren't they fixing the sidewalks? People are sending in requests. Things are going way too slow. And then all of a sudden, this thing comes up for North Avenue that has bike lanes. And I think, the perception out of the New North End is somehow the bikers get preference over the complaints of residents that have lived there a long time. I think those two are somewhat mutually exclusive, but I understand the underlying angst under there, that people feel they're not being heard. And then when the North Avenue pilot comes, it's like, let's not do that because I'm mad at the Department of Public Works. And I think that's a lot of what's going on, and it's completely understandable.
Let's take a question from the audience. Shelley, would you ask Mike for another 5 minutes because we have a couple more calls? Sir, you have a question? Could we get a camera on?
Yes, just a question about the pilot. What is the period that the pilot is supposed to start and end as far as when the lines are painted? And
So from what I know, the pilot's supposed to start May, June with the painting of the lines and reconfiguration. It's supposed to go until June through the summer, where it's kind of the slow season, and then several months into the fall. Optimally it would go for a whole year, but that seems like a lot for Burlington. But after that time, perhaps in October or November, they would do public outreach and do measurements to see how people are responding. And that gives people a chance to see what it's like in the summer, what it's like to see when school's in, and the hard commutes are coming in.
so June till November kind of thing?
June till November before the most of the measurements
We'll have to go to November.
Yeah, so that we can have time to measure and do public outreach, and actually, the idea is that, a vote's great, but it doesn't really reach everybody. And so the idea is, how do we reach as many people as we can who use North Avenue and really get solid and robust public feedback? That's the plan right now.
And if the people in the New North End don't like it, how does that get back to the mayor?
Well, there would be data behind that.
How?
For surveys, for interviews, for online, offline surveys, where people can go and respond to their experiences on North Avenue. It's
So
tabulated by the city.
It wouldn't be anything like the original meetings when they were trying to get public input.
No. That's the plan.
And the public wasn't able to input.
Right. The plan is to actually do a really good outreach with online, offline surveys. Make sure we're out in the schools, in the elder homes, in the neighborhoods, and make sure that people who are using North Avenue have a chance to respond, and that there's data behind it that can be correlated and checked.
Did you want to add anything to hit this man's question? Kevin?
No, the pilot we've been trying to nail down. I had the question several times at the task force. The first piece of literature was drafted at the last one that was done at the police department on 1 North Avenue. They had a task force meeting there that was reviewing it, and it was the first palm card that they had released. They printed 1,000 of them. So this outreach campaign that recently was the latest launch that was there. The website hadn't even been developed yet, and I was reminded that this was the 8th or 9th task force meeting, and if I wanted to come to more of them, that I'd feel free to get it and I would get the information. So I asked specifically about the pilot because the original intent was it was going to be striped in April, go from May until August. which doesn't represent the students. So Rich obviously has heard people say that that's not a good measurement of what's going on with the community. Without snow, plus with the kids in school. So I'd like to see in writing when the date is actually, but more so, we're going to have a chance to really have an information campaign, and you have a chance to vote March 1st on this ballot item.
Kevin,
Okay.
If I could respond, I also didn't think that doing just the summer pilot was a good idea, nor did I think doing only summer data collection was a good idea. So I know that CCRPC went back out this fall and did another round of data collection so that they'd have a before and after for not just the summer period, but for the fall period as well. They can't do the same data collection in the winter because you can't put those rubber strips on the road when the plows are out. But my understanding is that they're also going to put them back out in the spring so that if the pilot does go a full cycle through 4 seasons, they'll have summer data, fall data, and spring data to do those comparisons before and after. You know, I do think the one thing that this ballot item will give us is something to measure, whether people are for it or against it. I do think, though, that it would be better served a year from now. You know, to collect data on something that doesn't exist yet is very difficult. I think people have to judge it based on their feeling, whether they think this is going to make for a safer North Avenue or not, whether they think it's, you know, the potential inconvenience of a minor traffic delay is worth making it safer for everybody or not. You know, the ballot item itself, not misguided, but the timing of it is unfortunate, I think.
Let me take this call. Good evening. Do you have a question for our panel?
Yes, hi, this is Chris.
Hi, Chris. Do you have a question for the panel?
Yeah, hi. Liam, Rich, I've talked to you at previous task force meetings. Appreciate your feedback here today. My question is, education to motorists has been not the primary focus, or at least that's the perception. And it sounds like there's some good benefits. And when the pilot goes into effect and the data collection period starts, can you reassure residents of that data collection is going to be meaningful, and for those who have strong concerns and would like to voice those, that City Council would take that in consideration before proceeding with ending the pilot? Thank you.
Well, all I can say about that is then, Chris, that is a really good question, you know, and that's kind of when the rubber hits the road is, you know, who's going to create the data collection, who's going to monitor that. The plan is that it is going to be a very robust survey that actually gets at people's perceptions and experience of, you know, driving on this new configuration, and that it's supposed to be done in conjunction with the area professionals, either at UVM or people who do marketing surveys, to ensure that both the questions are right and that the data collection, you know, is secure. And obviously that will be shared both with the City Council, but I also assume with the Burlington public, with you citizens and residents.
And I think it's important to point out that there's 2 types of data collection going on here. There's qualitative analysis, hard numbers that are being collected by CCRPC, and there's quantitative, which you can measure, and qualitative, which is how people are feeling. Right now, it's really hard to gauge how people are feeling about something that doesn't exist. There's a plan to collect that data once the pilot goes in. The pre and post, the quantitative stuff, we've got 1 season worth that's all compiled. The fall data hasn't been compiled yet, but if you go to avenueforeveryone.com, you can look at things like throughput times, how long it's taking for people to get through that 0.8 mile section of road at AM peak and at PM peak, northbound and southbound. We know those numbers, so that if there are delays, we'll be able to measure them and decide whether or not it's worth it. They've got all the traffic volumes. They've measured them at Plattsburgh Ave. They've measured them at Ethan Allen Parkway. They've measured them at the 127, and they've measured them at the high school. So again, to your concerns, Kevin, about traffic diverting to other paths, they have that, and they'll know whether we're losing traffic, gaining traffic, or having people go a different
But I think
route.
the caller's question was, can he get a personal guarantee from Rich or from Liam or from whoever might be listening that once with our city councilors, Ward 4 and 7, they keep citing it unanimously because it was the gang of 10, we're going to go along with it. And at the last minute, a friendly amendment was, if we don't like it in the new North End, that we can have our voices be heard, we can then appeal to the process, and they'll put it back to the way it was. So the question the caller had, which it wasn't anybody that I had call, it's just a coincidence that it feeds right into what we're saying, is at the end of the day, after we spend the $155,000 on the pilot, when we could fix the existing infrastructure, which we all agree on, we'd be able to share that road with everybody, that isn't going to be extra money that it costs. That's part of the maintaining of the city. So when we like it or we don't like it, if this pilot goes through, if you don't like it, you're going to need to plead with City Hall, literally. And we've pleaded with City Hall. We've worked very hard, very diligently. It wasn't an open door process for us to get this on the ballot.
No.
And to have our city councilors put that amendment in there, a friendly amendment, which has no teeth in it at all. We can go through this whole exercise and they can just continue to move forward with whatever they feel is best for us. So your voices need to be heard.
Absolutely.
You need to turn out and vote and call your local city councilor. Let them know your concerns, whatever ward you're in, if it addresses you or if you need to share in that space. So I don't think there has been a clear outline when we're not happy with it. Clearly, I'm not happy about it. I put resources, money, and time behind this. But when I'm really not happy about it, how is that matrix going to be measured? And how are we going to find out and who's going to actually take the calls and make sure that it happens?
So we have one more question from the audience. I'm sorry, person on the phone, we won't be able to take your call because we need some time for closing comments. So, sir, do you have a question? Thank you.
My question is regarding, it would have to do with encroachment from the sidewalk into, I guess, the bike lanes or into the road. In a few instances regarding, like, say, snow. A lot of snow storage gets put into the median. It eventually spills out into the bike lane. Are bikes going to be flowing into the left lane more so to get through that? And then also with buses too. If a bus is loading and unloading, they're pulled off to the side of the road, what will happen with the traffic flow being backed up from that and such?
Okay, do we have any response to those questions?
I mean, I could take that.
Thank you, Liam.
With regards to snow storage, most of North Avenue has a green belt, and generally that's where the snow goes. For sections where there is no green belt, there's a little battle between the sidewalk plow and the street plow, so you may get some spillover. I think in the new configuration, because the lanes are wider, the bike lane's 4.5 feet. The 3 lanes that you'll have will be 10.5 each, and then you'll have another 4.5-foot bike lane because it's 40 feet curb to curb right now. What you've got currently is 4 10-foot lanes, so there's not a lot of space. And I think in terms of bikes drifting into the car lane, I wouldn't be concerned about that. For the sections of North Ave that have currently 10-foot lanes and bike lanes, so from the high school south, it's generally not a problem. They send the sidewalk plows out to do the sidewalks, and then they send them back to do the bike lanes. And DPW does a really good job keeping those bike lanes clear so that you're not forcing bikes out into traffic.
Okay, we're going to have some time here for closing comments. So, why don't we start with you, Kevin?
I started first. How do I have them wrap up?
Okay, why don't we start with you, Liam? Closing comments. Do you have a minute?
For me, this boils down to a conversation about convenience versus safety. I understand that some people feel like a delay in their commute might not be worth a safer conversion of North Ave with space for everyone. And I just can't see how you balance those two things. Sitting in your car on the way to work for an extra minute versus avoiding millions of dollars of costly crashes that affect everybody in our neighborhoods. Rich, anything from you?
Sure. I think this ballot item is a little confusing. So I just want to make it clear to the residents of Burlington that a yes vote on ballot item 2 means no to the pilot. And a no vote means yes to the pilot. Maybe that's a new North End logic, but yes means no and no means yes. And I think it's worth us testing the pilot. We can talk to each other forever. Let's get this and try it. Let's see how it works. And remember, this is a Burlington street. This is a street for all of the residents, for all the citizens and taxpayers. It's not just a new North End street. And I think the residents of Burlington also need to be heard on, especially those who use New North End who don't live out, who use North Avenue who don't live out in the New North End. So that I think is what really this ballot issue is about.
Thank you. Kevin?
So I guess for myself and wrapping up, to see this pattern work, you can travel in Essex Junction by the fairgrounds. I drop my son off twice a week, sometimes 3 times. And it's a commercial district, and there used to be 4 lanes, and now there's the suicide lane, the bike lanes on both sides, and north and southbound lanes that go through. As you're coming up on the fairgrounds, you need to make a decision. When you pull out of the flow of traffic into the suicide lane, the person coming at you, is he going into the Seaway Car Wash? Is he going into the KFC? Is he going into the Dunkin' Donuts? Because my left-hand turn for the fairgrounds is just a short stint right ahead. So as the buses pull over, which was the question from the audience, where are we going to go? We're all going to share the suicide lane, and it's called that for a reason. As we all went to school, we all took driver's ed. So my experience with this 3-lane infrastructure isn't going to necessarily serve the New North End as well as I think they have it designed. We have an existing infrastructure. If we fix the roads, maintain the crumbling sidewalks, we could share that, and everybody would have a nice, safe passage, and it would be about safety, and it wouldn't be about bicycles, as Rich said.
Thank you. Karen, closing comment?
I agree. I don't think it's about convenience versus safety at all, because I think it's much safer to be on the sidewalk. And I think that there is money allocated for fixing sidewalks. That should be used to pave and widen that section when it comes time. It doesn't need to be widened by very much. And it just doesn't make sense to have 3 alternatives for bikers and 1 for the motorists when they make up 99% of the people that use the road. And as far as crashes, I believe that that just enforcing the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit is the answer to safety on North Avenue.
All right, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I would like to thank everyone for your calls. I'd like to thank our studio audience. And we have been talking about ballot question number 2, which would advise the powers that be to keep 4 lanes open to motor vehicles on North Avenue. Thank you very much, Liam Griffin, Rich Nadworny, Karen Rowell, and Kevin King. Thank you so much for watching.